Hidden in plain sight across our planet stand massive stone monuments that defy explanation. How did ancient people, without modern technology, move 1,000-ton blocks with precision that would challenge today's engineers? From Turkey's mysterious Göbekli Tepe, built before farming existed, to Easter Island's haunting stone faces, these megalithic wonders tell a story of human ingenuity that spans 12,000 years. Journey through forgotten civilizations as we reveal the astronomical secrets carved in stone, engineering mysteries that baffle experts, and sacred purposes behind these colossal structures. Experience the awe of standing before humanity's most ambitious creations, silent witnesses to our ancestors' determination to touch eternity. High on a limestone ridge above the Anatolian plains, hunters once gathered in silence beneath the weight of stone that dwarfed their own lives. These were not farmers sowing seed, nor city builders raising walls, but wanderers who lived by chase and season. Yet here, more than 10,000 years ago, they shaped pillars taller than men, carved with creatures that seemed to stir in the half-light of dawn. No fields of grain surrounded them, no villages nestled at the base of the hill. Still, they raised monuments so colossal that even later kingdoms would stand astonished before their endurance. Göbekli Tepe reveals its story in fragments of carved limestone and heaps of fill, a hilltop sanctuary hidden for millennia beneath soil deliberately piled upon it. Circular enclosures took form, each ring anchored by twin T-shaped pillars that loomed at the center like guardians of a forgotten creed. Around them, smaller stones stood in arcs, forming sanctuaries where human hands sought communion with powers they could not name but only honor. The figures that emerged from these surfaces were not crude scratches but living forms, foxes slinking along the edges, vultures stretching their wings, serpents curling across stone as though they moved in real time. No settlements remained to explain who built them. The hunters of the upper Euphrates carried no pottery, raised no permanent dwellings, yet they organized labor on a scale that demanded vision. To carve pillars weighing as much as 20 tons, they quarried bedrock, hauled blocks with ropes of hide, and lifted them into sockets cut into the earth. Each action required planning beyond mere survival. A people who lived by flint-tipped spears and shared fires suddenly became engineers of the sacred, moving through rituals whose meanings have outlasted their words. Among the carvings, one stone draws attention beyond all others. Pillar 43, often called the vulture stone, displays a tableau of birds, scorpions, and strange symbols. Scholars have long debated whether these figures recorded myth or memory, story or sky. Some see in its imagery the echo of catastrophe, the suggestion of a great event in the heavens around 10,950 BC, when sudden climate upheavals reshaped the world. If true, this stone may preserve the earliest astronomical record carved by human hands, a message carried across 12,000 years of silence. The site's very fate deepens its mystery. At some moment, long after its completion, vast quantities of rubble were hauled to bury the sanctuaries. Thousands upon thousands of tons of soil and stone entombed the enclosures until only a mound remained. Such effort cannot be explained by accident. Whether the builders sought to seal a holy place, to preserve it from desecration, or to end rituals no longer sanctioned, the act itself stands as monumental as the creation. Temples raised with devotion were deliberately hidden, as though an entire age wished to fold its sanctuaries into Earth's embrace. What has emerged so far is only a fraction of the whole. Barely a corner of the mound has been uncovered, yet each excavation has revealed further circles, more pillars, more carvings. Beneath the soil still lie hundreds of stones unexposed, their secrets waiting for the moment they meet the sun once more. To imagine what lies beneath is to recognize how little of this story we yet understand. A landscape where ritual, labor, and memory converged at a scale earlier generations never dared attribute to wandering hunters. Ritual purpose saturates the site. No hearths for cooking, no traces of domestic life appear within the enclosures. Instead, animal bones scattered in deposits suggest feasting on a scale both celebratory and sacrificial. Skulls show marks of ritual display, hinting at practices that bound communities together in ceremonies where stone and flesh spoke the same language. Hunters gathered not only to consume, but to commune, to transform the act of survival into a covenant with forces beyond their reach. Each pillar carries a human form hidden in abstraction. Carved belts, hands, and garments turn T-shaped monoliths into stylized figures, colossal presences whose featureless heads look toward the sky. They stand not as idols of individual men, but as embodiments of something older, perhaps ancestral spirits, perhaps divine watchers who bridged the human and the eternal. Around them, animals carved in relief reminded those who gathered that the wilderness itself, fox, lion, crane, serpent, stood woven into the sacred order. These sanctuaries were not built once and left. Successive generations returned to expand, rebuild, and eventually cover old circles with new. Layer upon layer of ritual construction rose and fell, marking centuries of devotion on the same hill. Each phase reveals adaptation, as though belief itself shifted with passing ages, yet never abandoned the sacred ridge that had first drawn their ancestors together. In that continuity lies one of history's earliest testaments to tradition, a recognition that memory and place can bind communities as firmly as blood. The environment around Göbekli Tepe adds another dimension. In the millennia after the last ice age, the hills of Anatolia stood at the crossroads of transformation. Herds of gazelle and aurochs roamed the plains. Rivers offered abundance, and wild grains grew thick in the fields. Here, on this ridge above fertile valleys, people may have gathered from across wide regions to honor the rhythms of life. Ritual and survival merged, ceremonies to ensure the hunt, offerings to secure the future, feasts to knit scattered clans into a single people. Why they buried it remains the great enigma. To entomb working sanctuaries required intent, determination, and collective will. Was it a gesture of reverence, sealing the holy place when its time had passed? Or was it fear, an attempt to close doors to powers that no longer brought comfort? Whatever the reason, their labor preserved the site more completely than mere ruin would have allowed. Stone figures slept beneath earth for thousands of years, waiting for an age when hands would unearth them once more. In these pillars stands the dawn of monumentality. Before Stonehenge, before the pyramids, before cities and kings, hunters on Anatolia's hills envisioned permanence in stone. Their sanctuaries did not serve kingship or empire, but something older, a faith that gave shape to human awe in the face of mystery. To walk among the circles is to enter the earliest chapters of human imagination, where stone became the language of eternity. From this hilltop, one truth resounds. Civilization's roots may not lie first in farming or conquest, but in the act of gathering around stone. The builders of Göbekli Tepe did not yet sow fields, but they carved permanence into rock. And though their sanctuaries were sealed beneath earth, the vision they embodied would not remain buried. Across the continents, new peoples took up the same calling, lifting stones toward the heavens, inscribing belief into landscapes that still endure. Along the windswept coast of Brittany, ranks of stone rise in ordered procession. They stretch for miles across the fields of Karnak, where more than 3,000 monoliths stand like frozen legions. Here, 5,000 years after Göbekli Tepe's circles fell silent, communities of the Atlantic shores carved their own dialogue with the sky. No king's banner ever flew above these ranks. No general marshaled their positions, yet their silent order suggests design as deliberate as any army on parade. They belonged to a world where the sky itself was the measure, and stone became the medium through which entire communities inscribed their understanding of the heavens. Karnak's alignments, extending over 4 kilometers, are not haphazard scatterings of rock. Long rows march east to west, while standing stones of varying size create rhythm and pattern, as if responding to something larger than themselves. To walk among them is to sense repetition carried to colossal scale, each monolith echoing the next until perspective itself is lost in stone. Some rise taller than men, others barely emerge above the grass, but together they create a cadence that speaks of shared labor, guided by knowledge not easily dismissed as chance. Across the Channel, in the green valleys of Britain, other communities raised their own monuments of stone. At Avebury, in southern England, a circle nearly 400 meters wide enclosed a landscape of ditches, banks, and subsidiary rings. Massive sarsens, sandstone blocks weighing up to 40 tons, were dragged from the downs, shaped roughly, and planted in circles so broad that whole villages could gather within them. Unlike Karnak's long avenues, Avebury encircled rather than extended, creating a contained world where ritual, assembly, and the motions of sun and moon converged. How these monuments were raised remains one of the enduring puzzles of prehistory. No metal tools aided the shaping of the stones. No beasts of burden hauled them across the land. Yet they were transported and set upright with precision that mocked the simplicity of the available means. Wooden rollers, ropes of twisted fiber, sledges dragged across clay. These are among the techniques proposed, but none fully account for the scale of achievement. What matters most is not the exact method, but the evidence of communal will. Whole societies dedicating their labor to works of permanence, guided by beliefs that bound generations together. Astronomy appears as one of the strongest threads woven through these sites. Alignments at Karnak suggest awareness of solstices and lunar cycles, while circles in Britain mark turning points of the year with uncanny accuracy. The stones became instruments of time, calendars set into the earth, allowing communities to track seasons, plan hunts, and honor the rhythms of sun and moon. In these alignments, we glimpse an early science entwined with ritual, where observation of the heavens merged with devotion to forces believed to govern human fate. Yet the stones carry mysteries beyond their sheer scale. Some researchers have argued that a standard unit of measure, the so-called megalithic yard, approximately 2.72 feet, appears repeatedly across sites separated by great distances. If true, it would imply a shared system of measurement linking communities from Brittany to Britain long before writing or long-distance governance. Whether coincidence or evidence of contact, the suggestion deepens the sense that megalithic builders operated with knowledge far more structured than mere intuition. Sound, too, plays its part in this landscape. Within circles of standing stones, voices and instruments reverberate in unexpected ways. Certain pitches are amplified, others swallowed, as though the builders understood how to shape spaces that altered human perception. Some argue that these acoustic properties formed part of ritual practice, turning ceremonies into multisensory experiences where chant, drum, and dance blended with the resonance of stone. If so, the megaliths were not only monuments to sight, but instruments for hearing, resonating chambers where human and cosmic voices met. The labor required to raise such works cannot be overstated. Without centralized states, these communities organized themselves around shared belief. The stones themselves became proof of social cohesion, families, clans, and villages uniting for tasks that transcended individual survival. In building for the collective, they created landscapes where spiritual duty and communal identity became inseparable. To drag a sarsen across the downs was to participate in something larger than life itself, binding the living to each other and to those who came before. At Karnak, legends later spoke of armies turned to stone, frozen by divine wrath. In Britain, myths of giants and druids surrounded the circles, preserving in folklore the recognition that human hands alone seemed insufficient explanation. Though these stories belong to later centuries, they reflect an enduring truth. The monuments inspired awe in every generation that encountered them, for they testified to deeds beyond ordinary comprehension. The relationship between Karnak and Avebury is not one of imitation, but of parallel vision. In Brittany, lines of stones stretch outward, extending human presence into the horizon. In Britain, circles gather inward, enclosing sacred space within defined boundaries. Both approaches reveal attempts to map human life against cosmic order, one by extension, the other by enclosure. Together, they demonstrate the variety of expression within a single impulse, to anchor time and belief in stone. Ritual use of these monuments likely evolved over centuries. Feasting debris found near circles suggests gatherings where food and drink sealed community bonds, while burials in nearby barrows reveal a connection between stone and memory of the dead. The monuments became centers not only for watching the heavens, but for binding the living and honoring the departed. Their endurance across generations ensured that each new group inherited both the stones and the obligations they represented. As centuries passed, new circles were added, old ones altered, alignments refined. This continuity reveals not static tradition, but active engagement, communities adapting their monuments to shifting understandings while never abandoning the sacred landscapes already defined. In such persistence, we glimpse the dawn of cultural memory, the recognition that meaning can be anchored not only in story, but in enduring stone. The wind still moves through Karnak's avenues, and sheep still graze within Avebury's vast circle. Though their builders' names have long vanished, the stones continue to bear witness to the first great flowering of monumentality in Western Europe. They remind us that long before empires and kings, ordinary communities looked to the sky and found reason to shape the earth. In their alignments and enclosures lies the testament of people who measured their world, not by wealth or conquest, but by the eternal rhythm of sun, moon, and star. Yet the vision of shaping stone did not remain on northern shores. Far to the south, across the waters of the Mediterranean, other hands raised temples that rivaled even the grandeur of Egypt's later monuments. On the islands of Malta, colossal blocks were lifted into shrines where earth, sky, and spirit converged. Here, the Neolithic imagination reached another summit, sanctuaries carved with such precision and mystery that their echoes still whisper from the rock today. The Maltese archipelago, lying between Sicily and North Africa, became home to some of the earliest freestanding stone temples in the world. At Ganteja, on the island of Gozo, walls rose from massive limestone blocks, some weighing more than 50 tons, stacked with a confidence that belies the absence of metal tools or draft animals. To stand within these sanctuaries is to feel enclosed by the will of communities that measured their devotion not in words, but in stone hefted into eternity. Hagar Chim and Manidra, perched on Malta's southern cliffs, look out toward horizons where sea and sky meet. Here, temples were not mere enclosures, but cosmic instruments. Entrances align with the rising sun at solstices and equinoxes, channeling light through doorways into darkened chambers where carvings glow as though touched by divine fire. Such precision suggests not only architectural mastery, but an intimacy with the heavens inherited from generations of watching sky and season. The scale of the stones astonishes even now. Some blocks reach lengths of over 20 feet, rivaling the size of those used in Egypt centuries later. How these Neolithic builders cut, transported, and set such monoliths remains uncertain. Ropes of fiber, wooden rollers, and sheer communal effort may explain part of the process, but the precision of the joins, some fitted so closely that the eye struggles to find gaps, raises questions about knowledge now lost. In certain places, surfaces are polished smooth to sub-millimeter accuracy, suggesting a level of craftsmanship unexpected in an age without bronze or iron. The purpose of these sanctuaries seems woven into fertility and renewal. Carved figurines of corpulent figures, sometimes called goddess statues, suggest veneration of life-giving powers, whether maternal, agricultural, or cosmic. Altars within the temples bear traces of offerings, while subterranean chambers hint at rituals that united the living with ancestral spirits. To step inside is to enter a symbolic womb of stone, where cycles of life and death may have been enacted with solemn repetition. Geology itself played a role in the siting of these structures. Many temples rise directly above fault lines and areas of magnetic anomaly, as though their builders sought places where Earth's unseen energies were strongest. Whether by design or coincidence, the locations magnify the sense that these sanctuaries were intended as meeting points between worlds, human and divine, visible and invisible, stone and sky. Acoustics further enhance the mystery. In some chambers, a single voice reverberates into deep resonance, amplifying chants to unearthly tones. Experiments within Hagar Chim reveal frequencies that stir the body as much as the ear, suggesting ceremonies where sound itself became sacred. Such resonance could have bound participants together in trance, turning ritual into a shared journey that transcended words. Even so, despite their grandeur, the society that built these marvels vanished. By around 2500 BC, Malta's temple culture collapsed. The reasons remain uncertain. Climate change, resource depletion, or shifting trade networks may have played roles. What endures is the silence of temples left abandoned, their altars unused, their builders forgotten. The stones remained, but the voice that had once animated them grew still. Later peoples repurposed some of these sites, but none matched the vision of the first temple builders. The mystery deepens with every excavation. Why did a society capable of such coordinated achievement disappear, leaving monuments unmatched in the Mediterranean for centuries to come? The temples stand as empty shells, reminders of ambition once fulfilled and then extinguished. As waves crash against the Maltese cliffs, the temples endure as Europe's oldest freestanding stone architecture, older than Egypt's pyramids, older than Britain's stone circles. They embody the human impulse to raise sacred structures, not for rulers or conquests, but for the cosmos itself, turning barren rock into sanctuaries of meaning. But Malta was not the only land where stone took on a symbolic life. In the Nile valleys, a new tradition was unfolding. one that transformed the megalithic spirit into monuments bound to royalty and eternity, with stepped pyramids rising toward the heavens and culminating in the Great Pyramid. Egypt gave stone a voice that spoke to ambition beyond measure. In the lands beyond the southern desert, stone became more than sacred. It was tied to the stars and to the crown. Where Malta's sanctuaries honored cycles of fertility and the earth's hidden powers, Egypt transformed stone into a stairway of immortality. Here, rulers demanded not only remembrance, but eternal life, and the monuments they commissioned became the very symbols of their divine claim. The first step in this vision rose at Saqqara, where Pharaoh Djoser ordered his architect Imhotep to design a tomb unlike any before. Instead of a low mastaba of mud brick, Imhotep stacked stone upon stone, creating terraces that climbed toward the sky. The step pyramid stood as the earliest great experiment in eternal architecture, its 6 layers rising above the desert as a ladder for the king's soul. Surrounding it, a vast mortuary complex enclosed in stone walls carried chapels and courtyards, all arranged as a theater of eternity. For the first time, Egypt announced that its rulers would not be confined to the earth. They would ascend to dwell among the imperishable stars. In the generations that followed, the idea grew in ambition. Pyramids shifted from steps to smooth sides, their forms echoing the slant of sunlight itself. At Meidum and Dashur, early experiments tested the geometry. The so-called bent pyramid of Sneferu changed angle halfway up, its slope adjusted to prevent collapse. Whether by miscalculation or bold design, it revealed both the hazards and ingenuity of pyramid building. Nearby, the Red Pyramid emerged, its broad sides creating the first true smooth-faced pyramid in history. By Sneferu's death, Egypt had mastered the craft of raising mountains from stone. Then came the age of giants. On the Giza Plateau, 3 great pyramids rose in succession, each the tomb of a king, but together a statement of a civilization's power. Khufu's Great Pyramid towered above them all, a mass of more than 2 million stone blocks, each carefully set into place with joins so tight that a knife cannot slip between them. Its sides align almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, and its base measures with astonishing precision. Despite centuries of speculation, the methods used to raise such a monument remain uncertain. Ramps of earth, counterweights, levers, or techniques now lost to time. What is certain is that no other monument has so completely embodied human ambition in stone. Inside, the Great Pyramid conceals passageways and chambers whose purpose remains debated. The king's chamber lies at its heart, its granite ceiling slabs weighing dozens of tons yet balanced with care. Above it, hidden relieving chambers distribute the weight, demonstrating architectural knowledge far beyond trial and error. Other corridors ascend and descend into darkness, some leading nowhere, their meanings obscured. Even today, sealed cavities are suspected within, spaces still unexplored, as though the pyramid guards secrets not yet meant to be uncovered. The pyramid's behavior defies easy explanation. Within its stones, temperature remains remarkably constant, close to 20 degrees Celsius, about 68 degrees Fahrenheit, no matter the desert heat or the chill of night. Whether accident or design, this stability lends the interior a sense of otherworldly calm, as though the king's eternal house were insulated from time itself. Egyptian texts offer hints at what these monuments meant. The pyramid texts, carved on the walls of later tombs, speak of the king ascending to the heavens, joining the circumpolar stars, sailing the sky in the bark of Ra. In these spells, stone is more than shelter. It is a mechanism for transformation, a sacred machine that turns mortal flesh into divine presence. References to iron from heaven have been taken to suggest the use of meteoritic iron in sacred objects, perhaps even tools, reinforcing the sense that these monuments drew on celestial as well as earthly powers. Each pyramid was once crowned by a capstone, gleaming, perhaps sheathed in electrum, catching the first rays of dawn. None survive. Their absence has become a mystery in itself. Were they dismantled, stolen, or deliberately removed? Without them, the pyramids appear incomplete, their summits truncated. Yet in their prime, shining faces of polished limestone would have caught the sun so brilliantly that the desert itself must have blazed with reflected light. Mathematics, too, seems embedded in their design. Angles and ratios correspond to principles of geometry, some aligning with astronomical phenomena. Certain passages point towards stars of importance, while the overall layout of Giza reflects a cosmic order that mirrored the heavens. The plateau became a celestial diagram etched into stone, linking earth to sky. Some have even argued that the angle of pyramid slopes reflects the tilt of the earth itself, as though the builders sought to bind their kingdom to the planet's very axis. Even so, not all experiments succeeded. The Pyramid of Unas, though smaller, preserved the earliest carved texts, but lacked the grandeur of Giza. Later rulers attempted their own, but none matched the perfection of Khufu's age. Over time, the scale diminished, the precision lessened, and the golden era of pyramid building passed. Still, for those centuries between Djoser and the last kings of the Fifth Dynasty, Egypt stood unrivaled as the world's architect of eternity. The pyramids were not isolated structures, but parts of vast complexes. Causeways linked them to valley temples where processions began, and satellite pyramids dotted the desert around them. Whole communities of workers lived nearby, sustained by bakeries, breweries, and supply systems. Their labor was not the toil of slaves, as once thought, but of farmers and craftsmen, fulfilling duties owed to the state and the gods. In building for their kings, they believed they secured the harmony of the cosmos itself. Today, the pyramids stand weathered but unbowed, their casing stones stripped, their capstones gone, yet their presence still dominates the horizon. They remain the ultimate symbol of endurance, monuments that turn stone into a bridge between mortal life and eternity. But the plateau held more than pyramids. Not far from Khufu's great tomb lies another enigma, a colossal guardian carved directly from bedrock, its gaze fixed on the rising sun. Half lion, half man, it has stood watch for nearly 5,000 years, its weathered face bearing mysteries as profound as those of the pyramids themselves. Carved directly from the bedrock of the Giza Plateau, the great Sphinx crouches in the desert, with a body more than 200 feet long and a weathered face that has stared eastward for nearly 5 millennia. Neither built stone by stone, nor stacked in tiers like the pyramids beside it, the Sphinx was released from living rock, its colossal form shaped from the ridge itself. With the paws of a lion stretched forward and the features of a ruler gazing into the dawn, it endures as the oldest monumental sculpture in Egypt, and one of the most enduring enigmas of the ancient world. The Sphinx's scale alone makes it unique. Its head rises more than 60 feet above the ground, and its massive body, though eroded and patched with later restorations, retains the impression of a creature at once animal and divine. The Egyptians were not content to build walls or tombs in its presence. They transformed the landscape itself into an image of power, turning limestone bedrock into a cosmic guardian. It is part sculpture, part mountain, part riddle carved into stone. Most scholars place its creation in the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2500 BC, aligning it with the second of the Great Pyramids. The face, though damaged, has often been compared to his portraits, and the nearby Valley Temple appears to belong to the same complex. Yet even this attribution is not certain. No inscriptions name the builder, and no contemporary records describe the decision to carve such a monument. The Sphinx seems to emerge from silence, its origins half remembered even in Egypt's own later traditions. Geological debate has only deepened the mystery. Some argue that the deep, vertical weathering on its flanks points not to millennia of wind and sand, but to long exposure to heavy rainfall. If correct, this would imply an origin thousands of years older than Khafra, dating to a wetter age of the Nile Valley. Such claims push the Sphinx back into a prehistoric horizon when the climate of Egypt was very different. Whether coincidence of geology or evidence of an earlier past, the idea that the Sphinx predates the pyramids remains one of the most contested questions in Egyptology. Other enigmas lie beneath its pores. Seismic studies have suggested cavities or chambers under the monument, raising the possibility of hidden passages. Ancient legends speak of secret vaults, even of a library of forgotten wisdom concealed in its base. Herodotus, Pliny, and later Arab chroniclers wove the Sphinx into tales of treasure and prophecy. Nothing has yet confirmed these accounts, but the possibility that hollow spaces remain sealed beneath the Guardian still fuels speculation. The statue has not survived unscathed. Its nose, famously missing, is often said to have been destroyed by Napoleon's artillery, yet sketches from earlier centuries show it already absent. Medieval accounts describe deliberate defacement by iconoclasts, who saw in its human features an affront to their beliefs. Whatever the cause, the loss has only heightened its aura of mystery, as though the Sphinx resists clear definition, guarding its own identity as fiercely as it guards the Plateau. For the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx was far more than a silent guardian. It embodied the power of the sun, known as Harmakis, Horus of the horizon. At dawn on the equinox, sunlight strikes directly between its massive pores, reinforcing its role as mediator between sky and earth. Pharaohs returned to honor it long after its creation. In the New Kingdom, Thutmose IV placed the dream Stella between its paws, recording a vision in which the Sphinx promised him kingship if he cleared away the sand burying its body. That inscription preserved the belief that the monument itself could speak, offering prophecy to those who approached with reverence. The body of the Sphinx has been repeatedly buried and uncovered by drifting sand. Even in antiquity, entire centuries passed when only the head rose above the dunes, a giant face gazing over a hidden body. Each clearing became an act of restoration, a renewal of dialogue between Egypt and its oldest guardian. The process also transformed the Sphinx into a kind of timekeeper, alternately revealed and concealed, emerging again and again, as though reborn from the desert. Temples adjoining the Sphinx emphasize its sacred role. To its east stood the Sphinx Temple, built from the very blocks quarried from around the monument. Its massive pillars of limestone suggest a space for rituals linked directly to the Guardian's presence. Processions may have passed between the Valley Temple, the Sphinx, and the pyramids beyond, binding them into a single sacred landscape where king, sun, and eternity converged. The ambiguity of its meaning is part of its enduring power. Was it Khafra's portrait, a lionized form of the king? Was it an older monument, adopted and reinterpreted by later dynasties? Was it a solar symbol, a tomb guardian, or a vessel of prophecy? The Sphinx answers none of these questions directly. Its silence is more eloquent than any inscription, leaving each generation to interpret according to its own imagination. In that silence lies its true riddle. Unlike the pyramids, whose purpose is clearly funerary, the Sphinx resists categorization. Its human face merged with an animal body places it between worlds, mortal and divine, earthly and celestial, temporal and eternal. This very in-betweenness may have been its function, to embody the threshold itself, the place where human presence meets cosmic order. The Sphinx bears the scars of time, cracks in its body, repairs of different eras, scars left by wind, water, and human hands. Yet its gaze remains steady. It continues to look toward the rising sun as it has for thousands of mornings, a patient witness to the turning of ages. Around it, the pyramids have shed their casing stones. Dynasties have risen and fallen, and empires have passed. But the Sphinx remains, crouched in the sand as the eternal riddle of Egypt. And while Egypt gave the world a lion of stone, the lands to the north would raise stones on a scale even more astonishing. In the highlands of Lebanon, at Baalbek, blocks larger than any quarried at Giza were cut and moved into place, forming platforms that later Romans could not explain. Their colossal building passed beyond the symbolic into the impossible, and legends of giants and gods would grow around them. The site at Baalbek, known to the Romans as Heliopolis, the city of the sun, rests on a terrace of megalithic stonework unmatched in size. The so-called trilithon consists of 3 blocks, each weighing around 800 tons, fitted side by side in a retaining wall. Above them, later builders stacked smaller stones, but the colossal foundation endures as though it belonged to another age entirely. To stand before it is to feel dwarfed not by height but by weight, the sheer immensity of stone cut and set with unfathomable determination. Nearby, even larger stones remain abandoned in the quarry, including the stone of the pregnant woman, estimated at over 1,600 tons. It lies half-cut from the bedrock, its surfaces squared but never freed. Later excavations revealed still greater blocks left unfinished, suggesting that the builders intended to move stones of a scale beyond anything known in antiquity. Why they were abandoned remains uncertain. Perhaps cracks appeared. Perhaps the labor proved too great, or perhaps events interrupted the project. Whatever the reason, the sight of such monoliths lying half-shaped in the quarry conveys the ambition of a culture that sought to command stone on a scale that remains staggering. When the Romans arrived in the 1st century AD, they built temples of Jupiter, Bacchus, and Venus atop this platform, raising Corinthian columns of immense height. Yet their own writers gave no explanation for the gigantic stones beneath. The precision of the fit and the sheer weight of the blocks have inspired speculation ever since. Some suggest ingenious combinations of levers, rollers, and counterweights. Others propose techniques lost to history. In the absence of records, the platform itself becomes a silent testimony, resisting simple answers. Local traditions preserve echoes of older interpretations. Arab chroniclers told of jinn, or spirits commanded by Solomon to raise the stones. Legends grew of flying machines or supernatural giants who shaped the platform long before Rome. These stories, though impossible to prove, reveal how human imagination has always struggled to account for Baalbek's magnitude. Where engineering leaves gaps, myth rushes in. Baalbek was not alone. Along the coast, the ancient city of Byblos became a hub of megalithic construction and maritime trade. Its stone temples and harbour installations connected the Levant to Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. Byblos was already ancient when the pyramids were new, and its sanctuaries show how stone anchored both religion and commerce. Massive blocks formed its city walls, and megalithic shrines dedicated to local deities linked its people to the sea that sustained them. Here, ritual and exchange intertwined. The cedar forests of Lebanon provided timber, prized across the Near East, shipped from Byblos to Egypt for the building of ships, temples, and coffins. In return, Egyptian stone and artifacts made their way north. Within this flow of goods and beliefs, megalithic construction expressed continuity, as though the permanence of stone matched the eternal rhythm of the waves. Like Baalbek, Byblos attracted layers of culture over time. Phoenicians, Greeks, and Romans left their marks, but beneath their traces lie older foundations whose scale suggests a tradition of monumental building stretching back into prehistory. The layering of sacred spaces upon megalithic cores gives the impression of inheritance from an age whose memory was already fading. Each new people built upon what they found, never erasing the stones, always incorporating them as though they carried an authority older than any dynasty. The question of who first raised the megalithic foundations at Baalbek remains unanswered. Some argue that local cultures of the Bronze Age, drawing upon communal labor, achieved feats later credited to outsiders. Others suspect that the Roman platform merely extended earlier works, amplifying but not originating the colossal terrace. Without inscriptions, certainty eludes us. The stones themselves speak only of weight and endurance, not of the hands that moved them. Standing before the trilithon, the mind wrestles with scale. A block the size of a modern house rests seamlessly on its neighbors, as though placed there with ease. To imagine ropes and wooden rollers straining beneath such weight challenges credibility, yet no other tools are known from the time. Was human determination alone enough? Or was their knowledge now lost, techniques abandoned and forgotten in the shifting sands of history? The silence of Baalbek offers no reply, only the immovable presence of stone. As twilight falls over the terrace, the blocks cast shadows longer than walls, their edges softened by centuries of wind. The temples built above them lie in ruin, their columns toppled, their roofs collapsed, yet the foundation endures. It is as though later civilizations rose and fell, like waves upon the surface, while the megalithic core remained immovable beneath. Whatever purpose it first served, it still commands awe. And so, from Egypt's guardian lion to Lebanon's giants of stone, the mystery deepens. Across the Near East, civilizations carved permanence into their landscapes, each in forms beyond simple explanation. Yet where Egypt clothed eternity in the form of kings, Baalbek and Byblos point to a legacy where stone itself became the enduring power. Beyond the Levant, another land of ancient rivers carried its own vision of sacred architecture. There, in the plains of Mesopotamia, rulers, lacking quarries of stone, raised monuments of mud brick that reached for heaven. Ziggurats rose as stairways to the gods, towers of earth rivaling the sky, where the highlands of Lebanon raised mountains of stone. The plains of Mesopotamia turned earth itself into monuments. Between the Tigris and Euphrates, where rivers swelled and retreated in cycles of abundance and destruction, builders had little access to quarries. Stone was scarce, timber limited. Yet this was the cradle of cities and kings, and they would not be denied the grandeur of scale. Instead of carving blocks from rock, they molded clay into bricks, millions upon millions of them, stacked into terraces that rose like stairways toward the sky. The ziggurat became their answer to the pyramid, massive platforms built of sun-dried and fired brick. Faced with bitumen and sometimes stone, they stood as artificial mountains in landscapes otherwise flat. At the great ziggurat of Ur-Nammu rose in the 21st century BC, a tower of 3 ascending levels crowned by a temple to the moon, god Nana. Its walls, sloping inward to resist collapse, created a profile both monumental and graceful. To climb its staircases was to ascend symbolically from earth to heaven, each step drawing closer to the divine. Unlike Egypt's pyramids, which enclosed silence, Mesopotamian ziggurats were living sanctuaries. Priests ascended their stairways to offer daily rituals, watching the heavens from platforms that commanded the horizon. From their summits, the motions of stars and planets were charted, the rhythms of sky married to the cycles of agriculture. The ziggurat was at once temple, observatory, and axis mundi, the world's axis, binding the city to the cosmos. The builders of Mesopotamia worked with materials humble in origin, yet grand in number. Bricks of clay carried the imprint of human hands, pressed with reeds, baked in kilns, or dried in the sun. These units, small enough to hold, became the fabric of vast monuments that could dominate an entire city's skyline. In this transformation lay a kind of magic. Earth and water reshaped into forms that claimed permanence against time, even as erosion constantly threatened their decay. Mathematics guided their dimensions. Proportions of ziggurats reflect knowledge of geometry and ratios that allowed the towers to stand for centuries. The Sumerians and Babylonians, masters of the sexagesimal system, encoded their numbers into the very design of their monuments. Some alignments echo astronomical order, staircases set toward cardinal directions, terraces marking divisions of the heavens. In their layered bricks lies the same impulse seen in stone circles and pyramids, to mirror the sky upon the earth. Legends grew around these towers. The story of the Tower of Babel preserves memory of ziggurats so ambitious they seem to challenge heaven itself. The biblical tale recalls a city united in purpose, raising a tower with its top in the heavens, only to have the gods intervene. Whether myth or echo of actual construction, the story captures the impression such monuments made: audacity on a cosmic scale. Kings used these towers to bind politics and religion. Ur-Nammu dedicated his ziggurat to Nana, not only as devotion, but as proof of his authority over the city. Each new dynasty restored or expanded the sacred towers, linking their reigns to divine favor. To command the building of a stepped tower was to demonstrate not only wealth, but alignment with the gods. For such works required the labor of thousands and the devotion of generations. In Babylon, the great ziggurat known as Etemenanki rose to honor Marduk, lord of the city. Its name meant house of the foundation of heaven and earth, a phrase that captured its purpose: to anchor the divine within the mortal realm. Ancient writers described it as 7 stories tall. Each level painted a different color to symbolize the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. Though only ruins remain, the memory of its height lingered in Greek and biblical accounts, its grandeur woven into the imagination of the ancient world. Though brick was their primary medium, stone was not absent. In Byblos and other Levantine ports, blocks of stone were imported and used for casing or ornament. Mesopotamian builders also employed bitumen as mortar, binding bricks with a substance drawn from the very ground, dark and imperishable. The combination of clay and pitch gave their structures both strength and symbolism. Earth and fire joined with the deep essence of the underworld. What remains tells a story beyond scale alone. Offerings placed within ziggurat foundations suggest rituals of consecration, embedding the sacred into the very base. Foundation deposits, cylinders inscribed with prayers, figurines of protective deities, fragments of precious materials were buried beneath corners and walls. These hidden gifts turned architecture into ritual, ensuring that the gods themselves were invested in the stability of the tower. The visual dominance of ziggurats defined their cities. From afar, they rose like mountains above flat plains, visible for miles. For inhabitants, they were the constant reference point, the axis around which daily life revolved. At dawn, smoke from offerings curled upward against the sky. At night, flames lit the summit. Farmers in surrounding fields would glance toward the city and see their god's dwelling shining above. That towering shrine was not just a place of worship, it stood as the city's very identity in earth and brick. Erosion and time have not been kind to these monuments. Unlike the limestone of Egypt, mud brick crumbles with centuries of rain and wind. Many ziggurats survive only as mounds, their outlines blurred, yet excavations reveal their once grand staircases, walls and corners, traces of plaster still clinging to bricks. In these remnants lies the memory of structures that once rivaled any pyramid in scale, even if their fragility denied them the same endurance. Even so, fragility was not defeat. For millennia, rulers rebuilt the towers, layer upon layer, each restoration an act of renewal. This cycle of decay and rebuilding mirrored the Mesopotamian vision of the cosmos itself. Eternal return, death and rebirth, order rising from chaos. The ziggurat thus became more than architecture. It became a living embodiment of time, rebuilt as often as necessary to reassert cosmic harmony. Standing upon their terraces, priests read omens in the sky, traced the movements of Venus and Jupiter, and recorded eclipses with precision. In those moments, the tower of worship was a vantage point between earth and heaven, a bridge that allowed mortals to glimpse the patterns of the gods. From such watchtowers emerged the astronomical traditions that would shape calendars and guide agriculture for centuries across the Near East. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia remind us that monumentality does not belong only to stone. Clay, brittle and perishable, when multiplied in countless hands, could create mountains to rival the desert's natural peaks. These towers, rising from mud, yet reaching for the sky, embodied the faith of a people who made the very dust of their land ascend toward heaven. And just as rivers of clay became stairways to the gods, the distant Andes would see rivers of stone carved with a precision beyond imagining. There, high on the Altiplano, blocks locked together with joints tighter than modern steel, forming temples that defy both time and explanation. Across the ocean and high upon the Altiplano of South America, another vision of stone emerged. One that did not rely on clay or brick, but on the living rock of the Andes itself. Here, at nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, the people of Tiwanaku and its sacred neighbor, Puma Punku, carved blocks of andesite and sandstone with a precision that challenges explanation. Where Mesopotamian towers rose by the multiplication of small units, the Andes proclaimed their genius in the perfection of massive stones fitted together without mortar. Their joins so exact that even a blade of grass cannot pass between them. Tiwanaku became the spiritual center of the Andean world. Its vast ceremonial plazas and monumental gateways spoke of a society that saw stone not only as building material, but as sacred text. The Gateway of the Sun, carved from a single block of andesite, stands decorated with enigmatic figures and symbols, its central deity radiating with staff and rays. Scholars debate whether this carving encodes a calendar, a myth, or an astronomical chart. Whatever its meaning, it shows how stone in the Andes was transformed into a canvas of cosmic order. Just beyond Tiwanaku lies Puma Punku, a site whose stonework has provoked awe for centuries. Scattered across the ground are H-shaped blocks cut with such angular precision that they resemble pieces of a massive interlocking puzzle. Their edges are sharp, their surfaces ground flat, their grooves and recesses consistent to sub-millimeter accuracy. Some weigh over 100 tons, yet appear as though shaped by machines. The methods remain debated. Stone tools and abrasive sand could account for some of the shaping, but drill holes and fine channels suggest techniques that seem to exceed the expectations of their time. Legends of the Andean people themselves attributed Puma Punku to gods or culture heroes. In later traditions, it was said to have been built in a single night by supernatural forces. The presence of unfinished blocks and scattered fragments hint at cataclysm. Perhaps earthquake, perhaps flood, perhaps violent upheaval that shattered a sacred complex. Some even suggest explosive force, for stones appear to have been hurled apart as though struck by more than mere time. The choice of material was as significant as the design. Andesite, one of the hardest volcanic stones, demanded immense effort to shape, yet artisans mastered it, producing not only monumental blocks, but delicate details, channels, and joins that still provoke debate. In some stones, traces of magnetic anomalies have been reported, leading to speculation that their builders selected rock for properties beyond the visible. Whether intentional or coincidental, the effect adds to the aura of mystery that clings to Puma Punku's ruins. The construction methods inspire theories ranging from the practical to the extraordinary. Ropes, ramps, and human labor certainly played a role, for no evidence exists of beasts of burden or wheels used in transport. Yet the precision of the blocks, some stacked in tight polygonal masonry, resembling stiles found across oceans, fuels speculation of lost techniques or shared knowledge. The resemblance between Andean stonework and walls in places as distant as Greece and Egypt raises questions. Coincidence of human ingenuity or echoes of a broader pattern in human civilization? Tiwanaku thrived as more than an architectural center. It was a hub of pilgrimage, where thousands gathered for rituals tied to solstices and agricultural cycles. Vast courtyards enclosed sunken temples, their walls lined with carved faces, perhaps representing ancestors or divine beings watching over ceremonies. The Kalasazaya temple aligned with celestial events, its walls and pillars framing the path of the sun. Here, religion, astronomy, and architecture converged into a single sacred landscape. Agriculture supported this vision. The Tiwanaku people engineered raised fields and canals that harnessed the waters of Lake Titicaca, producing surplus enough to sustain monumental projects. In this way, their stone temples were not isolated marvels, but expressions of a society deeply embedded in its environment. The mountains, the lake, the sky, all became participants in their sacred architecture. When Tiwanaku collapsed around 1000 AD, its monuments remained as silent witnesses. Later, Inca rulers revered the site, claiming descent from its gods and drawing legitimacy from its ruins. They too mastered polygonal masonry, locking stones together with irregular perfection, as if to echo the achievements of their predecessors. Through them, the techniques of Tiwanaku and Puma Punku lived on, woven into the very fabric of Andean identity. The allure of these sites lies in their contradictions: precision without writing, monuments without wheels or beasts of burden, cataclysm without clear cause. Tiwanaku and Puma Punku embody mysteries that resist tidy answers, forcing us to confront the limits of our understanding. Were these feats purely the result of human labor, or did they preserve techniques since forgotten? Each block, each join, each carved groove insists that the people of the Andes possessed knowledge as profound as that of any civilization of the Old World. As the wind whistles across the Altiplano, the stones of Puma Punku lie scattered, their fragments resembling pieces of a vast puzzle never completed. The gateway of the sun still stands, its carved deity gazing impassively over the plateau, a silent witness to centuries of speculation. To walk here is to feel the collision of human ambition and natural upheaval, a place where mystery outweighs certainty, where silence speaks louder than explanation. From the high Andes, the story of stone shifts once more. Across the seas in Britain, circles of standing stones mark the solstices with equal devotion. There, at Stonehenge and its surrounding monuments, another dialogue with the heavens unfolded. One written not in mountains of brick or blocks of andesite, but in circles that framed the rising and setting of the sun. On the chalk plains of southern Britain, a ring of stones rises against the horizon, stark and silent. Stonehenge has become one of the most recognized monuments on Earth, yet its original purpose remains elusive. Circles of towering sarsen and smaller bluestones stand in alignment with the sun, their weathered surfaces bearing the marks of a people who measured not wealth or conquest, but the rhythm of time itself. The story of Stonehenge did not begin with these great stones. Long before they were raised, timber circles and earthworks marked the site. Ditches and banks encircled the landscape, hinting that the plain already held sacred meaning. Over generations, wood gave way to stone, as though permanence demanded harder material. What we see today is only the final phase of centuries of construction, adaptation, and ritual layering. The smaller bluestones, transported from quarries in the Preseli Hills of Wales, nearly 150 miles away, reveal both determination and mystery. Without wheels or beasts of burden, the builders carried or dragged these stones across rivers and hills, perhaps by sledges, rafts, and sheer communal effort. Why bring them from such distance when closer stone was available? Some suggest that their origin carried ancestral or healing power, connecting this chalk plain to distant mountains. The bluestone's journey remains one of prehistory's great enigmas. The larger sarsens, weighing up to 40 tons, were hauled from quarries 20 miles north. These blocks formed the iconic outer circle and the trilithons, two uprights capped by lintels. Ingenious mortise and tenon joints locked the stones together, evidence that the builders possessed not only brute strength, but sophisticated knowledge of carpentry applied to stone. The result was an architecture both functional and symbolic, a circle open to the sky yet marked with precision. Astronomy pervades the site. The axis of Stonehenge aligns with the sunrise at the summer solstice and the sunset at the winter solstice. On those days, light pours through the avenue and strikes between the stones, transforming the circle into a calendar written in shadow and flame. To gather here was to witness the cosmos inscribed upon the earth, the turning of the year made manifest in stone. Recent discoveries have expanded the mystery. Ground-penetrating radar around Stonehenge revealed hidden monuments beneath the soil, a vast complex of post holes, ditches, and stone structures, forming one of the largest ritual landscapes in prehistoric Europe. Durrington Walls, a massive earthwork nearby, once enclosed timber circles where feasting and ceremonies took place. The area around Stonehenge was not a solitary monument, but the heart of a vast ceremonial zone where the living and the dead converged. Burials add to the puzzle. Cremated remains found within the site trace origins back to Wales, the very source of the bluestones. It seems Stonehenge was more than a calendar. It was a place of pilgrimage, where people carried their dead across great distances to be interred within the circle. In this sense, it was both a temple of the sun and a necropolis of memory, a gathering of the living with their ancestors beneath the solstice sky. Sound may also have shaped the experience. Studies suggest that Stonehenge amplifies certain frequencies, creating resonances that could transform chanting or drumming into immersive ritual. To stand within the circle was not only to see the heavens, but to hear them, to feel vibration merge with light. If true, the stones became an instrument as much as a monument, orchestrating an experience that blended sight, sound, and spirit. Folklore has long cloaked the site in myth. Medieval tales spoke of giants who carried the stones from distant lands, or of the wizard Merlin who raised them by magic. Curses were said to fall upon those who disturbed the circle, a reflection of the awe it continued to inspire. Such legends, though fanciful, reveal an enduring truth, that Stonehenge seemed beyond the capacity of ordinary men, demanding explanation in the language of the marvelous. Still, for all its grandeur, Stonehenge was not static. Stones were rearranged, removed, or broken over centuries. Some sarcens are missing, their absence hinting that the circle was once larger or differently arranged. The monument we see is incomplete, a ruin not only of time's decay, but of deliberate alteration. Perhaps meanings shifted, rituals changed, or the community itself fragmented. Stonehenge, like the society that built it, was dynamic, evolving through the centuries of its use. Its endurance lies not in clarity, but in enigma. Unlike pyramids or ziggurats, whose functions can be named, Stonehenge refuses final interpretation. Was it an observatory, a temple, a tomb, or all at once? Each theory captures part of the truth, but never the whole. Its silence resists completion, ensuring that the circle remains open, not only to the sky, but to human imagination. As dusk falls on the plain, the stones cast long shadows across grass and chalk, their forms both stark and solemn. They do not speak, yet their arrangement tells of a people who sought order in the cosmos and inscribed it upon the land. To walk among them is to share in a vision that stretches beyond generations, where ritual and astronomy merge into the mystery of human purpose. From this silent circle of Britain, the trail of stone leads eastward, toward a valley where cities themselves became monuments, planned with such precision that they seem to echo the geometry of the heavens. Beyond the deserts of Mesopotamia and the circles of Britain, a different kind of monument emerged. Not a temple of stone alone, but entire cities laid out as if drawn with ruler and compass. Along the banks of the Indus River, at Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, a civilization flourished whose architecture was not symbolic alone, but practical, yet no less mysterious for its order. Here, the geometry of the cosmos seemed to descend into the very streets, as if the city itself had become a sacred design. Mohenjo-Daro rose from baked brick rather than carved monoliths, but its scale and planning rivaled any megalithic tradition. Streets ran in straight lines, intersecting at right angles, forming a grid that modern eyes would recognize instantly. Houses opened onto courtyards, wells supplied water to nearly every block, and drains ran beneath the streets to carry waste away. In an age when most of the world lived in villages of thatch and mud, the Indus cities stood as marvels of organization, as if a single mind had ordered their construction. At the heart of Mohenjo-Daro lay the so-called Great Bath, a vast sunken pool lined with baked bricks and bitumen, filled by carefully channeled water. Scholars debate its purpose. Was it a public reservoir, a ritual bath, or both? Its construction suggests more than utility. It was a space designed for ceremony, cleansing, and perhaps rebirth. To descend its steps was to step into a ritual of water and stone, where the body entered not just liquid, but the symbolic currents of purity. Granaries, warehouses, and raised platforms reveal a society of abundance and administration. Standardized weights and measures, carved into stone cubes, ensured fairness in trade. Seals engraved with animals and symbols still undeciphered hint at a system of writing whose meaning remains lost. Without translation, the voices of this civilization remain silent, but the uniformity of its signs across vast distances suggests a network bound by shared knowledge. Harappa, to the north, mirrored Mohenjo-Daro in its careful planning, as though both drew from a common blueprint. This twin vision implies central authority, or at least shared ideology, cities designed to embody order itself. Their scale was vast, tens of thousands of inhabitants living within walls of baked brick, supported by farmlands that stretched along the river's floodplain. Such organization required not only labor, but belief, the conviction that human life must mirror the geometry of the cosmos. What is most striking about the Indus cities is what they lack. No great palaces dominate their skylines. No colossal statues proclaim kingship. Unlike Egypt, Mesopotamia, or the Andes, their grandeur lay not in a single ruler's tomb, but in the collective harmony of streets, baths, and warehouses. Authority is invisible, hidden in administration rather than monument. This anonymity only deepens the enigma. Who led these people, and why did they leave no record of their names? Alongside their urban marvels, the Indus culture also raised megalithic monuments in the south of India. Long after Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa declined, communities erected stone dolmens, cairns, and standing stones across the landscape. Some served as burial markers, others as ceremonial alignments. Many were oriented toward the movements of the sun, reinforcing the theme that architecture across the world echoed the heavens. These southern megaliths connect India to the global pattern of stone traditions, linking its ritual life to the mysteries of far-distant lands. The precision of Indus urbanism has led some to compare it with modern planning. Drainage systems, wells, and water storage reveal an understanding of hygiene centuries ahead of their time. Houses shared standardized brick sizes, suggesting centralized regulation. Even the spacing of streets seems to reflect a unit of measurement repeated across the cities. Such regularity implies a worldview where human life, like the stars, moved in ordered cycles. Even so, the greatest mystery is the collapse. Around 1500 BC, the great cities were abandoned. Streets emptied, drains clogged, baths fell silent. The civilization that had thrived for centuries vanished without leaving a clear explanation. Some blame shifting rivers as the Indus changed course and left fertile lands barren. Others suggest climate change, drought, or floods. Still others point to invasions or internal decline. No single answer satisfies, and the silence of the undeciphered script leaves the story unfinished. The enigma of abandonment mirrors other global mysteries. Just as Malta's temple culture disappeared, and Tiwanaku's precision masonry was left in ruins, the Indus cities stand as reminders of fragility. Greatness was not enough to ensure survival. The very order that had sustained them may have become brittle, unable to adapt to shifting earth and sky. Of all the Indus remains, the seals are the most puzzling. Stamped with signs and animal forms, unicorns, bulls, elephants, they speak in a script still unbroken. Without their voice, we glimpse only fragments. The grandeur of urban design, the precision of trade, the ritual of water. Their silence deepens the aura of mystery, turning Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa into monuments of absence as much as presence. The megaliths of southern India, though less famous, preserve echoes of the same impulse. Dolmens, built of massive stone slabs, guard burials, their entrances sometimes aligned with celestial events. Menhirs stand alone on hillsides, their purpose obscure, but their presence undeniable. These stones may not rival Giza in scale, but they share its mystery, the translation of belief into enduring material. Together, the cities of the north and the stones of the south form a vision of India's ancient soul, one that fused order with devotion, geometry with faith. To walk among the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro today is to step into silence. Straight streets stretch empty, houses crumble into low walls, and the great bath stands dry. Yet the impression is not only of loss. The layout remains legible, the order still visible. Even in ruin, the city speaks of a civilization that sought harmony between humanity and the cosmos. Its disappearance may be unexplained, but its vision endures. As the Indus civilization faded, other lands of Asia carried forward their own monumental traditions. In China, jade became the material of the sacred, and earth was shaped into pyramids of staggering size. There, emperors would claim eternity in tombs guarded by armies of clay, while legends told of rivers of mercury flowing beneath their burial mounds. Within the river valleys of eastern China, another monumental tradition emerged, built not only upon the strength of stone, but upon the glimmering delicacy of jade and the monumental force of earth. Here, long before emperors, the Liangzhu culture carved sacred objects whose precision rivals any megalith. Centuries later, rulers of the Qin dynasty commanded entire landscapes of earth and stone to serve them in death. Between these two horizons, China's ancient builders carried forward a vision as enigmatic as any pyramid or circle of stones. At Liangzhu, around 3000 BC, jade became the material of eternity. Craftsmen shaped Kong cylinders and Bai discs with astonishing accuracy, drilling perfect holes and polishing surfaces to mirror-like sheen. No metal tools are known from the period, yet the hardness of jade demands methods far beyond simple abrasion. How these objects were worked remains uncertain. Their surfaces are engraved with masks and geometric designs that suggest cosmic significance, symbols of heaven, earth, and the spirit world. In these objects, ritual belief took physical form, carried in stones so hard they could outlast dynasties. Centuries later, the Shang and Zhou dynasties built platforms, palaces, and tombs of rammed earth, some layered with stone. These structures, though less visually striking today, reveal knowledge of engineering that allowed walls and terraces to endure for millennia. Foundations of temples and altars show alignment with celestial events, linking ritual practice to the heavens. Earth itself became monumental, molded into geometric shapes that defined sacred space. Early Chinese pyramids, massive earthen mounds, dot the landscape of Shanxi province. Some date earlier than the Great Pyramids of Egypt, their outlines softened by time, their size hidden beneath grass and farmland. Though less famous, they remain among the largest earthworks ever attempted. Beneath them lie the tombs of rulers whose names have faded, but whose ambition demanded eternal presence. These mounds, aligned with cosmic order, suggest a worldview in which kings joined the cycles of heaven through their burial architecture. The pinnacle of this tradition came with Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, who died in 210 BC. His tomb complex near Xi'an stretches for miles, an underground empire designed to mirror the world above. Around the central mound, armies of terracotta warriors stand in formation, each with distinct features, weapons once sharp in their hands. Workshops produced thousands of figures, infantry, cavalry, archers, charioteers, guardians who would protect their emperor for eternity. The scale of the enterprise was colossal, employing vast numbers of artisans and laborers in service of imperial immortality. Tales of the tomb speak of marvels still concealed. Ancient texts claim that rivers of mercury flow through subterranean chambers, imitating the geography of the empire. Modern soil tests have indeed detected unusually high levels of mercury around the burial mound, lending weight to the accounts. If true, the emperor lies surrounded by a deadly river meant to symbolize eternal dominion. Few monuments in the world so perfectly embody the fusion of power, mystery, and engineering as this underground palace. The decision to leave the central tomb sealed has preserved its enigma. Archaeologists have excavated the outer pits, but hesitated to breach the core, fearing damage from exposure. Thus, the first emperor still lies beneath his pyramid of earth, his secrets intact. What lies inside remains a question for the future, a mystery preserved by the very ambition that created it. While the Qin tomb overshadows later history, earlier traditions linger in silence. Jade working of the Liangzhu culture, earth mounds of forgotten rulers, astronomical alignments embedded in architecture, all form a chain of continuity. China's monuments were never merely stone for its own sake, but symbols of cosmic order, embedding heaven and earth into ritual landscapes. To look upon a Liangzhu's jade disc is to confront patience measured in lifetimes. Hours upon hours of grinding, polishing, engraving, until translucent perfection emerged. To stand before the earthen mound of the first emperor is to feel the weight of ambition so great it reshaped a landscape. Both extremes reveal the same truth. China's builders transformed matter into meaning, whether through fragile carving or massive construction. Stories lay down extra layers, tales of hidden texts, lost inventions, and secret chambers surround these monuments. Some believe the first emperor's tomb conceals not only treasures, but records of ancient knowledge deliberately suppressed. Others whisper of jade amulets infused with spiritual power, preserved in the tombs of kings. The lack of direct evidence fuels speculation, but also ensures that China's ancient monuments remain alive in the imagination, never reduced to simple ruins. In these works, the balance between fragility and endurance becomes striking. Jade objects could be shattered in an instant, yet survive thousands of years when buried. Earthen pyramids erode with every rainfall, yet loom across plains for millennia. The contrast reflects a civilization that saw permanence not only in size but in meaning, objects and monuments intended to carry the living into harmony with the cosmos. With the sun setting over Shanxi's fields, the distant pyramids soften, their lines vanishing into the horizon. Farmers plough their fields on slopes that hide royal tombs, while beneath the ground, armies of clay still stand at attention. The silence of these monuments is profound, their mysteries intact. China's ancient stones and earthworks remind us that the pursuit of eternity takes many forms, from jade discs polished by hand to mountains of earth sheltering emperors. Far to the southwest, deserts and mountains of Arabia held their own secrets. There, traders and pilgrims raised standing stones in barren valleys and carved sanctuaries into sheer cliffs. In the rose-colored city of Petra, monuments were not built but hewn from rock itself, transforming stone into facades of dazzling intricacy. In the deserts of Arabia, stone rose in silence, marking landscapes where water was scarce and survival itself seemed a miracle. Long before cities and empires took root, communities placed standing stones in Yemen and Oman, erecting markers whose purpose remains obscure. Some stand alone on barren ridges, others gather in clusters like councils of silent witnesses. Their weathered forms resist explanation, boundary stones, altars, or monuments to the dead. Whatever their role, they reveal that even in the harshest terrain, people sought to anchor meaning in stone. The standing stones of southern Arabia often reach several meters in height, their surfaces roughly shaped but deliberately placed. Many align with celestial points, suggesting that the builders oriented them towards sunrise or solstice. In a desert where the sky dominates, such alignments carried both practical and symbolic weight. To measure the sun's course was to measure time itself, a necessity for nomadic life bound to the rhythms of the seasons. Tombs cut into rock accompany these monuments. Across Yemen, cairns and dolmens shelter burials beneath layers of stone, blending permanence with the transience of sand. Carved chambers inside cliffs and plateaus reveal remarkable skill with limited tools, echoing traditions found across distant lands. Though often simple in form, they testify to the persistence of megalithic vision. Even in regions without fertile valleys or great rivers, stone became the bridge between life and death. Further north, in the deserts of Jordan, the Nabataean kingdom created one of the most extraordinary cities of antiquity. Petra, hidden within sandstone cliffs, remains a masterpiece not of construction, but of carving. Its facades, cut directly into rose-colored rock, transform natural cliffs into monumental architecture. The most famous, known as the Treasury, presents an ornate facade of columns, pediments, and sculpted niches, all emerging from living stone. To approach it through the narrow canyon of the CQ is to experience revelation. Stone transformed into palace, desert turned into sanctuary. Petra was more than spectacle. It was the heart of a kingdom that controlled caravan routes linking Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. Incense, spices, and precious goods flowed through its gates, enriching rulers who poured their wealth into monuments. Tombs, temples, and altars fill the valley, each carved with precision into the sandstone cliffs. The entire city became both necropolis and sanctuary, a place where the living honored their dead and proclaimed their prosperity to travelers from distant lands. The engineering behind Petra is as impressive as its artistry. Channels cut into rock carried water from distant springs, feeding cisterns and reservoirs that sustained the city in its arid setting. The Nabataeans mastered hydraulic engineering, transforming desert into habitable sanctuary. Their skill with water echoed their skill with stone, invisible systems supporting visible grandeur. Without such control, the monuments would have been impossible, for survival itself depended on water flowing through carved channels. Some monuments align with celestial events, linking Petra to the broader tradition of sacred astronomy. Temples and tombs face rising or setting points of the sun, reinforcing the connection between the built environment and the heavens. For the Nabataeans, as for so many ancient peoples, stone was not passive, but alive, mediating between earth and sky. Each facade became a kind of cosmic gate, carved not only for the dead, but for the order of the universe. Tales surround Petra's monuments. The treasury, with its intricate facade, inspired tales that it concealed hidden riches. Its urn atop the structure said to hold gold. Marks of bullets on the urn bear witness to generations of treasure seekers who sought to break its mystery. In reality, it was a tomb, Yet the persistence of legend speaks to the aura of secrets that clings to the city. Even stripped of myth, its presence overwhelms, as though stone itself were enchanted. Beyond Petra, other Nabataean sites extend the tradition. Rock-cut sanctuaries at Hegra, modern-day Alula in Saudi Arabia, replicate the style of Petra, their facades rising from cliffs in equally dramatic form. These monuments, too, proclaim a mastery of stone carving, unparalleled in the region. The spread of such sites shows how the Nabataeans fused their cultural identity with the act of carving the landscape, making stone their canvas, their script, and their legacy. Despite their grandeur, the Nabataeans left few written records. Their script survives, but not in volumes that explain their worldview in depth. Instead, their monuments speak for them, the silence of carved facades carrying messages we can only partially interpret. In this absence of voice lies their enduring mystery, a civilization remembered more by stone than by text. The decline of Petra remains another puzzle. Roman annexation in the 2nd century AD diminished the city's independence, while shifting trade routes eroded its wealth. Earthquakes damaged its monuments, and over time, the desert reclaimed its streets. By the Middle Ages, Petra had faded from memory, known only to local tribes and occasional travelers. When it was rediscovered by Europeans in the 19th century, its facades emerged from centuries of silence, preserving the mystery that still defines them today. The stones of Arabia and Nabataea reveal a continuity of vision, from standing stones raised by early desert peoples to the carved cities of the Nabataeans. The impulse remained the same: to inscribe permanence into landscapes of impermanence. Sand shifts, rivers dry, empires fall, but stone endures, carrying forward whispers of belief and ambition. Megalithic traditions did not belong to fertile valleys alone. In Africa, south of the Nile, new centers of stone culture emerged. Nubia built pyramids that echoed Egypt. Axum raised stelae taller than any column in Greece, and Great Zimbabwe created vast stone enclosures without mortar. Across the continent, stones rose again, each tradition unique yet bound to the same human impulse, to anchor meaning in the immovable. Along the Nile's southern reaches, pyramids rose once more. In the kingdom of Kush, centered at Napata and later at Meroe, rulers built hundreds of small, steep-sided pyramids that echoed Egypt, yet carried their own identity. These monuments, clustered across desert cemeteries, served as tombs for kings and queens of Nubia. Though smaller in scale than Giza, their numbers astonish. More pyramids stand in Sudan than in Egypt itself. Each one reflects a culture that drew inspiration from the north, while reshaping it to local traditions. The Nubian pyramids reveal subtle differences from their Egyptian models. Their angles are sharper, their chambers simpler, their scale more modest. Yet the ritual meaning remained potent. Rulers buried with jewelry, weapons, and sacred objects to guide them into eternity. Hieroglyphic inscriptions continue into this southern kingdom, but so too do local deities and practices, blending two worlds into a hybrid vision of afterlife and kingship. The persistence of pyramid building long after Egypt had abandoned the practice shows the enduring power of stone as a vessel for eternity. Further east, in the highlands of Ethiopia, another culture raised monuments of extraordinary scale. The kingdom of Axum, flourishing in the early centuries AD, erected stelae, towering obelisks of granite that dominated its capital. Some reached over 100 feet in height and weighed more than 500 tons. Carved with false windows and doors, they resembled multi-story palaces rendered in stone. perhaps marking the houses of the dead in the afterlife. To carve and raise such colossal monoliths required engineering skill rivaling that of any ancient culture. Legends describe the stelae as symbols of power wielded by divine kings. One tradition holds that they marked the resting places of rulers, though many stelae contain no burials beneath them. Others may have served as ceremonial markers, connecting heaven and earth through their sheer verticality. Their placement across Axum suggests a sacred landscape, a city where stone towers proclaimed authority to subjects and travelers alike. The largest of all, now broken, is estimated to have stood over 30 meters tall, its weight exceeding 500 tons. How such a stone was quarried, transported, and erected remains uncertain. The quarry lies miles away, and the incline between it and the city would have posed immense challenges. Some speculate about ramps, rollers, and thousands of laborers, but the logistics strain the imagination. In this gap between possibility and evidence lies the aura of mystery that surrounds Axum's monuments. Axum's influence stretched far. It commanded trade routes across the Red Sea, linked to Arabia, India, and beyond. Gold, ivory, and exotic goods flowed through its markets, funding monuments of stone that declared its wealth. Its rulers embraced Christianity in the 4th century AD, and legends later tied the kingdom to the Ark of the Covenant itself. Whether myth or fact, Axum became enshrined in memory as a land where divine favor met human ambition. Further south, in the savannas of Zimbabwe, another tradition of stone took shape centuries later. Here, between the 11th and 15th centuries AD, communities built massive enclosures of granite without mortar, stacking blocks with precision into walls that still stand today. Known as Great Zimbabwe, this complex of walls, towers, and passageways sprawled across the landscape, its ruins testifying to a civilization of immense sophistication. The great enclosure, with walls up to 30 feet high and hundreds of feet long, curves in sweeping arcs that enclose open courtyards. Within it stands the conical tower, a mysterious structure without doors or chambers, whose function remains unknown. Some see it as a granary, others as a symbol of authority or fertility. Whatever its purpose, it dominates the enclosure with an enigmatic presence, a silent sentinel within the stone labyrinth. Great Zimbabwe's construction reveals astonishing skill. Builders shaped granite blocks by hand, fitting them together without mortar, relying on friction and weight for stability. The result is walls that have stood for centuries, despite rain, heat, and shifting ground. Their curves follow natural contours, blending architecture with landscape. This harmony suggests not only technical expertise, but also a worldview that saw stone as part of nature's order, shaped but not dominated by human will. The city thrived as a center of trade, linking inland Africa to coastal ports and global networks. Gold and ivory traveled outward. Beads, porcelain, and glass arrived from as far as Persia, India, and China. The wealth generated by this exchange supported rulers whose authority was expressed not in pyramids or stelae, but in stone walls that enclosed sacred and political space. To walk among them is to sense both grandeur and secrecy, a city designed to impress and to conceal. Mystery clings to Great Zimbabwe's decline. By the 15th century, the city was abandoned. Some suggest environmental pressures, overgrazing, or depletion of resources. Others point to shifting trade routes. The stones remain silent and monumental, their builders' names lost, their purposes partly obscured. For centuries, outsiders refused to believe that local African peoples had created such marvels, spinning myths of foreign architects. Archaeology has since confirmed its African origins, restoring the achievement to its rightful place in history. Taken together, Nubia, Axum, and Great Zimbabwe reveal Africa's megalithic legacy in all its diversity. Pyramids rising from desert sands, stelae piercing the sky, walls curving across granite hills, all express different visions of permanence. Each culture shaped stone to its own ends, to preserve the dead, to proclaim kingship, to enclose mystery. Their endurance proves that Africa was not a silent continent, but a stage where stone spoke with voices as powerful as those of Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Europe. What unites these monuments is their silence. No builder's inscriptions survive at Great Zimbabwe. No clear explanation defines Axum's stelae, and Nubia's pyramids stand largely unrecorded in texts. The absence of written testimony forces us to interpret through the stones themselves, reading meaning in form and scale. In this silence lies their allure. They do not lecture or explain. They simply endure, asking questions that remain unanswered. In the humid lowlands of the Gulf Coast, giant faces stare from stone with expressions both stern and timeless. The Olmec civilization, flourishing more than 3,000 years ago, carved colossal heads from basalt boulders, each weighing up to 40 tons. Their features, broad noses, full lips, helmet-like headdresses, have no equal in the ancient world. No inscriptions explain their meaning. No accompanying texts describe their purpose. They simply sit where they were placed. Monuments of presence whose silence has invited speculation for centuries. Quarries lay more than 60 miles from the sites where these heads now rest. Transporting such immense stones without wheels or draft animals demanded ingenuity. Scholars propose rafts on rivers, log rollers, or human labor alone. Whatever the method, the effort was immense. To move and shape these stones required organized authority and communal purpose. Each head embodies not only craftsmanship, but also the power of leaders capable of commanding such undertakings. The individuality of the faces suggests portraiture. Subtle differences in expression and headdress imply that each represents a specific ruler. If so, they preserve the likenesses of people otherwise lost to history, immortalized in stone when no written records survive. Their sheer scale proclaims authority. A ruler who could command a monument 40 tons in weight asserted dominance not just in life, but in memory. The Olmecs did more than carve heads. Their cities contained ceremonial platforms, plazas, and ball courts, the architecture of a society where ritual shaped daily life. Stone altars, often massive in size, depict figures emerging from caves or thrones, suggesting mythic scenes tied to fertility and rulership. In these works, stone became both political propaganda and sacred symbol, binding human authority to cosmic order. Centuries later, farther inland, another city rose on a scale that dwarfed all before it. Teotihuacan, in the Valley of Mexico, became one of the largest urban centers of the ancient world. Its wide avenue of the dead stretched for miles, lined with temples and platforms, culminating in pyramids of staggering size. The Pyramid of the Sun, built from millions of tons of stone and rubble, rose over 200 feet high, rivaling the great monuments of Egypt in volume. Nearby, the Pyramid of the Moon anchored the city's northern end, while the Temple of the Feathered Serpent displayed intricate carvings of serpentine deities. The layout of Teotihuacan reflects precise astronomical planning. The Avenue of the Dead is aligned 20 degrees east of north, possibly to track the setting of the Pleiades or the path of the sun on key dates. The pyramids themselves may mark solar and lunar cycles, transforming the entire city into a cosmic diagram. To walk its avenues was to move through a calendar inscribed in stone, where civic life unfolded within the rhythm of the heavens. Beneath the pyramids, hidden chambers add to the mystery. Tunnels beneath the pyramid of the feathered serpent contain offerings of obsidian blades, jade figurines, seashells, and even pools of liquid mercury, perhaps meant to symbolize rivers of the underworld. Such discoveries suggest rituals of extraordinary symbolism, where rulers and priests sought to replicate the cosmos beneath the earth as well as above it. Material choices deepen the enigma. Sheets of mica, a mineral with electrical properties, were found embedded within the structures. Their purpose remains unclear: insulation, symbolism, or something else entirely. The presence of such material, brought from distant lands, underscores the sophistication and ambition of Teotihuacan's builders. They did not simply raise stone for mass and form. They infused their monuments with elements that hinted at deeper meanings. The city itself lacked inscriptions naming rulers. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, Teotihuacan left no clear kings' names, no dynastic records. Authority was expressed through architecture and imagery rather than words. Murals depict priests, warriors, and deities, but the silence of written history persists. This anonymity adds to the mystery. Was power collective, or were rulers deliberately concealed behind the mask of the sacred city? At its height, Teotihuacan may have housed over 100,000 people. Its markets, workshops, and neighborhoods reveal a cosmopolitan society that drew resources from across Mesoamerica. Obsidian tools, pottery, and exotic goods testify to trade networks that stretched from the Gulf Coast to the Maya lands. The city's influence spread far, its style copied in distant regions, its power felt across centuries. Then, around 600 AD, Teotihuacan declined. Buildings were burned, monuments desecrated, and the city abandoned. The reasons remain uncertain: internal revolt, invasion, or environmental stress. Like the Indus and Malta before it, Teotihuacan became a ruin long before its time. Its pyramids and avenues endured, but their purpose was left to silence. Later peoples, including the Aztecs, came upon the ruins and wove myths around them, naming it the City of the Gods. To them, only deities could have built such grandeur. The stones of Mesoamerica thus tell two intertwined stories. The Olmecs carved individuals into stone, immortalizing rulers whose faces stare back at us across millennia. Teotihuacan, by contrast, erased individuality, creating a city where architecture itself became the sovereign. One vision placed human likeness at the center. The other dissolved human names into the geometry of pyramids and avenues. Both approaches reveal the same truth. In Mesoamerica, stone became the medium of power, belief, and mystery. To stand before an Olmec head is to confront presence, imposing, direct, unmistakably human. To walk the avenue of the dead is to feel absence, an overwhelming city without voices, its silence as heavy as its stones. In these contrasts lies the enigma of Mesoamerica, a civilization that spoke in monuments rather than words, leaving us to interpret the message carried in their stone colossi. Far out in the Pacific Ocean, more than 2,000 miles from the nearest continent, a small volcanic island bears one of humanity's most haunting legacies of stone. Easter Island, Rapa Nui to its inhabitants, holds nearly 900 statues, the Moai, each a silent figure gazing inland from the slopes and shores. Their sheer number and size overwhelm the island's modest landscape, raising questions that have never been fully answered. The Moai were carved from volcanic tuff at quarries on the slopes of Rano Raraku. Some stand over 30 feet tall and weigh more than 70 tons. Others remain unfinished, half freed from the rock, their forms frozen in the act of emergence. The process was immense, yet carried out with stone tools alone. Ropes, levers, and human labor moved the statues from quarry to platform, but precisely how they were transported remains contested. Experiments suggest they may have been walked upright with ropes, rocking from side to side, an image that transforms the act of movement into ritual procession. Most moai were placed upon ahu, stone platforms built along the coast. From these bases, the statues faced inland, their backs to the sea, watching over villages and fields. The orientation suggests they embodied ancestors, guardians ensuring fertility and protection. Eyes of coral and obsidian once filled their sockets, giving them presence as living beings in ritual ceremonies. When the sun rose or set behind them, light and shadow would have turned their impassive faces into masks of cosmic power. Many statues extend below the surface. Excavations revealed that what appears as a head and torso above ground often conceals full bodies beneath, carved with intricate petroglyphs. These hidden forms suggest that the moai were not only images of authority, but repositories of sacred symbolism. Their burial in earth may have been deliberate, linking them to cycles of life, death, and renewal. The logistics of construction reveal as much mystery as their purpose. Without wheels, draft animals, or metal tools, the Rapa Nui people carved, transported, and raised hundreds of moai across their island. The sheer scale of the endeavor demanded enormous communal effort. To participate in raising a statue was likely both duty and devotion, a demonstration of loyalty to chiefs and ancestors, and an act that bound the community together in shared ritual. Yet the legacy of the moai is not only grandeur, but collapse. By the 17th century, statue buildings ceased. Many moai were toppled, their faces buried in earth. Scholars debate the reasons: environmental exhaustion from deforestation, warfare between rival clans, or the disruption of European contact. Whatever the causes, the silence of the moai became emblematic of a society undone by its own ambition. Stone that once symbolized vitality and protection came to mark decline. The mystery extends to writing. Rapa Nui preserves wooden tablets inscribed with rongorongo, a script of glyphs arranged in alternating directions. No one has yet deciphered it. Some scholars doubt it represents true writing. Others see in it a lost key to the island's history. If readable, it might explain the meaning of the moai, the rituals that raised them, or the reasons for their fall. For now, rongorongo remains mute, an undeciphered voice of the Pacific. Beyond Easter Island, the Pacific holds other echoes of megalithic tradition. In Micronesia, the ruined city of Nan Madol rises from artificial islets built of basalt columns. Its canals, plazas, and tombs form a labyrinth upon the sea, a ceremonial center where stone and water merged into a single vision. Legends describe it as the work of sorcerers who commanded stones to fly into place. The reality of human labor does not diminish its enigma. The construction of an entire city upon coral reefs stands as one of the most ambitious architectural feats in Oceania. On Tonga, standing stones form trilithons, aligned with celestial events. Across Polynesia, marae, sacred platforms of stone, served as places of ritual, their alignments linking sky and sea. These monuments, though less massive than the moai, reveal a shared impulse to transform scattered islands into landscapes of sacred permanence. Even in the vast ocean, where waves erase traces of human presence, stone anchored meaning against impermanence. The persistence of stone in the Pacific reflects both necessity and vision. Wood decays in humid climates, but volcanic rock endures. Islanders turned their hardest material into markers of ancestry, ritual, and cosmos. Each monument embodied continuity across generations, binding communities together through shared labor and belief. The effort invested in carving and moving stone was not extravagance, but survival of identity. Easter Island remains the most haunting of these traditions. To stand before rows of moai is to feel the paradox of presence and silence. Their faces are human, yet they do not speak. Their scale is monumental, yet their island is small. Their numbers overwhelm, yet their people declined. They embody both the heights of human creativity and the fragility of societies that dare to invest so much in permanence. The mystery of the Pacific megaliths lies not only in how they were built, but in why. What compelled small communities, isolated in ocean vastness, to pour such energy into stone? Was it faith in ancestors, fear of rivals, devotion to the cosmos? Perhaps it was all at once. The stones remain to remind us that meaning can outweigh necessity, that humans will shape the hardest matter into symbols of the invisible. As the waves crash against volcanic cliffs and trade winds sweep across the moai, the Pacific's monuments stand in silence. Their builders are gone, their purposes only partly understood. Yet the stones endure, guarding mysteries that no storm or conquest has erased. They are the last great expression of a vision that had carried humanity from Anatolia to Brittany, from Egypt to the Andes. The conviction that through stone, the fleeting life of mortals could touch eternity.